done a lot of talking about my process of, growing up and becoming an adult gay person or an adult lesbian, but I thought it might be useful to do a little video too. So I've been having a lot of feelings lately, so here they all come. Uh, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time really focused on the idea of identity and really trying to figure out how I could take the way that I felt inside, the person that I felt like I was inside, and project that to the outside world. I wanted basically to look the way that I felt in the hopes that that would lead the world or society at large to treat me the way that I wanted to be treated, to perceive me the way that I perceive myself, right? I think this is a really normal human thing, right? We're social animals. We want to be seen, and that's kind of just part of how we communicate and exist together as a social group. And I've done a lot of writing about kind of how my thinking shifted from this idea of identity to this idea of, I just call it reality, right? This idea of who I think and feel like I am on the inside versus just this is the reality of the situation. I am a female, I'm a lesbian. These are real things that don't need any sort of modification or validation to be true. They are true, they are facts. And then there's things like I'm an athlete. That is an identity. That takes work. That takes me doing something in order for it to be true, right? So that's kind of how I think about those two things a little bit differently. And what I've written about in the past is kind of the way that I've had to sit with myself and really consciously dig into why do I feel the way that I do, and not only why do I feel the way that I do, but like what does that mean, and how does that inform how I go about my life? How does that inform how I interact with people? How does that inform how I want to be interacted with? And kind of it's all a social thing, right? It's how do I want to see and be seen within the world, right? So lately, I've been seeing a lot of, and this isn't new, right? But I've been reading personally a lot of people saying, well, this certain type of person wouldn't have this sort of, this sort of difficulty or thought process or trials for this long. And if I were not this sort of person, then I wouldn't be going through this thought process. And you all know what I'm talking about, right? You've heard it before. I think that kind of sets us up into a new binary that I don't really feel comfortable with personally. I think that difficulty in one's body and discomfort within one's body that's a human experience. Most of us feel that way in some way, right? And there are some nuances to that, and what I'm getting at specifically is, of course, these feelings of not liking a female body, not liking the attributes of a female body and wishing that they were different. I think that is, of course, the way that I'm talking about it is a uniquely female experience. All that I can do is talk about it from a female experience. But I don't think that there's such a strong binary between, this sort of person would think about this and feel this way and have this sort of thought process persist, especially because this is the sort of thought process that builds on itself and builds on itself and compounds. And the more you think about it, the bigger of a problem it becomes. Versus, I think all women experience, or, the majority of women, I can't say all, I don't want a blanket statement, but a lot of women experience some level of discomfort and unhappiness in their bodies, right? And I think it's a lot of how we perceive it and how we deal with it and the power that we give it in terms of what that means. In a lot of my writing, I've talked about, just digging into not only that I'm having these feelings, but also what do they mean? Where do they come from? And what am I obligated to do with them or not obligated to do with them? In my case, I have essentially decided for myself that what I'm obligated to do with these feelings is to recognize them, to hold them, and then know that they're just feelings and that they're not reality, and that they're a lot informed by society. They're a lot informed by how I want to be treated in the world. They're a lot informed by how I want people to just see and know and recognize me immediately. And what I've come to learn is that most people aren't automatically seen as, their true and authentic selves. You have to be open with who you are. You have to be giving of who you are, and that will help the world recognize you and take you for, you know, who you are. But it takes a lot of giving, I think, giving of yourself. And that's hard, right? That's really hard. Especially if, you know, you are not what society expects of your specific group of people, right? I'm not exactly what society expects of a woman, but I go out there and I am myself, and I am authentic every single day in who I am, and this has really shaped my life in the way that, you know, I think the world interacts with me. The world sees my confidence in who I am, and I project confidence in who I am, and that helps me be taken the way that I want to be taken. And so I also think a lot of times in my writing it may have come off as, you know, I did this thing in the past and now I don't have to do it anymore, but that's just not the case. It's a constant, you know, weekly, daily work. It's the same as any sort of self-introspection. Every single day you're a slightly different person. Every single day you are learning yourself a little bit better, getting a little bit deeper into who you are. So I didn't, you know, sit down for a year or two and then, you know, worked through all of my issues and you know, now I just don't even think about it, and I'm just, you know, carefree and happy-go-lucky all the time. But it is a daily work. It is a daily practice. It's not something that just clicks and then you have it. You have to keep working at it continually. And I find a lot of value in doing that work. I find a lot of self-knowledge in doing that work, and in every day approaching myself in that way, and every day, you know, digging deeper into myself, sitting with the parts of me that are uncomfortable, the parts of me that hurt psychologically, right? You know, things that hurt, things that feel incongruous, things that, you know, it's easier for me to look out into the wider world and see other people taking different paths than I've taken and thinking, oh man, maybe things would be easier if I would have taken that path. Rather, if I had stayed on that path, right? But I find a lot of value and a lot of power in being able to sit with myself, who I am, without any sort of dependency on any sort of intervention from anybody else or any sort of outside forces. I just am, right? I am. And that, to me, is the true power.